I told them he threatened me with being a cop and they decided to go home with me. James lived 2 buildings after mine, and the man only went to work on the weekend. When the cops got to his door and made him come out, he was visibly scared.
Hey, which precinct are you with? The 5th. 5th was shut down last year. Who's your captain? Smith. There's no Captain Smith in this district. Badge number? 7,842. 7,842 belongs to Officer Harris. You sure that's yours? Yeah, I think so. Think so? Turn around. You're not a cop. Let's sort this out at the station.
Well, it turned out that he wasn't a cop and only said that to scare me. Sometimes he will wear cop uniform, so I actually thought he was a cop. I got a fake police officer arrested after months of swallowing his dirty attitudes. My name's Amoy, and I'm black, originally from Jamaica. I moved to the USA into a neighborhood with a lot of white Americans and was not accepted by the majority of them. I used to work at a traveling agency in Jamaica, and my neighbors were all good to me. I got a promotion and got transferred to the States, and my neighbors were completely different from the ones in Jamaica. The first day I arrived, I caught some people eyeing me with disgusting gazes. It was quite surprising because I did nothing to offend them, but I ignored everything and focused on arranging my new home. The next day, I needed to look around to find nearby hospitals, eateries, and also clubs, as I loved to club every weekend. Unfortunately, even the taxi drivers there didn't like me. I flagged down about 3, and when they stopped and saw me, they would simply drive away. Eventually, one stopped and even smiled at me before I got in. I did find the buildings I was looking for, and luckily, they weren't so far from where I lived. When I returned home, I was so tired, so I fell asleep. But I was awoken by loud bangings on my door. I forcefully woke up and went to the door. There, an angry-looking man was staring at me. I asked what he wanted, and shockingly, he threw a bucket of snow into my house.
This is to warn you to never cross paths with me, else I'll harm you in ways you never imagined.
I was confused. I'd never even met him. I was surprised as to how he found my house and felt he was right to attack me like that. Before I could speak, he turned and left. I stood at the door for what seemed like minutes before I finally went in and cleaned the snow from my hallway. I resumed work 2 days later and was wise enough to avoid everyone in my neighborhood. I didn't say hi to any, neither did I even make eye contact with them. I needed to avoid troubles as best as I could. Unfortunately for me, I fell into one a week later. It was a Saturday and I didn't have work. With no one to talk to, I left home and went to a nearby park. When I got there, I saw that there were a lot of people there. I nearly left because I wanted some peace and quiet, but I decided to stay. I found a bench beneath a broad tree and went to sit there, facing the lake in front of it. Just when I was finally enjoying nature, I heard a familiar voice behind me.
I warned you to never cross paths with me, you idiot.
When I turned, I saw James, the man who threw snow into my house. I wondered what he wanted from me this time. What do you mean? I was sitting alone.
That's my seat. You're watching me, aren't you? What? Did you come here to spy on rich people so you can attack them with your black boyfriend?
Where did that even come from? I was so confused. I tried to explain to him that I met the bench empty, but he slapped me instead. The shock and force of the slap made me fall on my butt. Do you know what you just did?
Of course I do. If you dare try to get on my nerves again, you'll receive more than a slap, you silly thing.
He was so rude. I stood up, dusted my clothes, and threatened to report him to the cops.
Oh great, I work as a cop, and I'm gonna make sure you're put behind bars. I dare you to report this.
That scared me. If he was a cop in such racist place, then I would have no chance. There was no way his colleagues would support me and throw him under the bus. I felt so miserable and angry as I walked back home. I went straight to bed to avoid overthinking. The next day after work, I saw that someone had poured dirt all over my front porch. Tears formed in my eyes as I stared at it. I was so tired from the long day I had. I hadn't imagined that I would have to clean the place again. Of course, I had no idea who did. My neighbors hated me. Any of them could have done it. I dropped my bag on the floor and began clearing the place. It took me about 20 minutes before I finally finished. I crashed on the couch immediately and fell asleep. The next morning, when I got out of the house to go to work, I nearly fell into a pile of dirt in front of my door. Again. This time, I saw James standing a few steps away.
Come on, report to the cops. I'd like to see you in jail, impersonator.
I wondered who I was impersonating to be called the name. I was tempted to go to the station, but again, I remembered that he was a cop and I couldn't win against a cop. I wasn't having any fun at all with how life was going. James refused to get off my back. He was always doing something to make me feel angry. I noticed that all my other neighbors had stopped looking at me with those disgusting eyes. Instead, they ignored me. I was grateful for that and wished James would do the same, but he was adamant on making my life a living hell. One day, on my way home from work, I came across two elderly ladies carrying heavy bags. I was tempted to help them with it, but I was also scared of getting shooed away. Unable to watch them struggle with the bags any longer, I went forward and asked to help them. They looked surprised, but allowed me. Even though I was tired, I carried the bags to their home, and they were so thankful to me. Another day, I helped a little injured girl by carrying her home, and her parents had the same look of surprise before they thanked me. I helped other neighbors randomly whenever they seemed to need help. Luckily, they never refused, and always thanked me afterward. James didn't stop harassing. Once, he even threw an egg at me right after I stepped out of my house to head to work. I was forced to go back in and change my clothes. I would report him to my neighbors, but even though I'd helped them a lot of times, I wasn't close enough to them to initiate any conversation. I felt so alone and frustrated by James's actions. One day, after he poured paint on me for shutting my door too loudly, I decided that I'd had enough. The next morning, I headed straight to the station to report James. Surprisingly, the cops weren't racists as I'd expected. When I told them about all of his behaviors, they were both shocked and irritated. I told them he threatened me with being a cop and they decided to go home with me. James lived 2 buildings after mine, and the man only went to work on the weekend. When the cops got to his door and made him come out, he was visibly scared.
Hey, which precinct are you with? The 5th. 5th was shut down last year. Who's your captain? Smith. There's no Captain Smith in this district. Badge number? 7,842. 7,842 belongs to Officer Harris. You sure that's yours? Yeah, I think so. Think so? Turn around. You're not a cop. Let's sort this out at the station.
Well, it turned out that he wasn't a cop and only said that to scare me. Sometimes he will wear cop uniform, so I actually thought he was a cop. I couldn't believe that he made me believe such a lie for 2 months. He was immediately arrested. At the station, the cops were angry at him for being racist and also lying about who he was. He was kept in the cell until I was ready to press charges. Before he was taken in, he cried and apologized to me. That was giving me second thoughts about pressing charges. I decided to let him be in the custody of the cops before I could finalize what to do to him. Shockingly, 2 days later, I got a call from the station. James had escaped. I was so scared. How was it possible for him to escape the custody of the cops? I was so scared because I suspected him coming after me. Well, my suspicions were true because I came home from the station to see that someone had broken into my house. Before leaving, I'd left a few dollar bills on my table and I returned to see it gone. I knew James broke into my house and stole them. I contacted the police to tell them about it, and they promised to find James and arrest him. I lived in fear. At night, I would hear knocks on my windows and door, but if I went to check, I would find no one there. Other times, I would see a poster of a clown there. I could barely sleep. I was restless and uncomfortable. One day, while doing my laundry, I heard my front door open and the sound of footsteps. I began trembling as I walked out of the bathroom. When I reached the living room, I didn't find anyone. Before I could turn, someone's hand came around my neck and put me in a headlock. I tried to scream, but the grip was too strong.
Didn't I warn you to not mess with me? How dare you report me to the cops?
He let go of me and manhandled me to face him, then slapped me harshly, causing me to yelp and fall to the floor. I screamed for help, but another slap shut me up. James began to hit me. He threw punches and slaps everywhere, laughing as he did. He then started throwing petrol to set my house on fire with me in it. Luckily for me, 3 of my neighbors rushed into my house and pulled James away. Apparently, they'd heard my scream and rushed over. They gave James a few punches to weaken him before they tied him and called the cops who came and took him away. I followed them alongside my neighbors. On the way, they kept asking if I was okay. I felt so grateful to them because I hadn't expected anyone to help me. James ended up going to jail because he was found guilty after I wasted no time in pressing charges. Most of my neighbors came to me to apologize on his behalf, and also the way they treated me when I first moved in. Of course, I forgave them. The others would give me reassuring stares if we crossed paths or ask if I was doing good. It felt so great to see that my neighbors didn't have any more hatred for me. Some cab drivers were still racists, as well as some people in the club, but I didn't mind. I just avoided them. After a month in jail, James tried to escape again, but he was caught and shot at by the cops. After his wound was treated, he was moved to another prison where dangerous criminals were. They found out about James's attempt to escape prison, just to assault a black woman and burn her house, which made them furious. This led to him being severely beaten. He ended up with a fractured nose, broken legs and ribs, and a deep wound in his left eye. Again, he was taken to the hospital where the doctor accidentally sent a nurse who was still learning to treat James. The nurse injected him wrongly, and he got injured in the butt, which caused him to lie on his chest for weeks. Eventually, he returned to jail, but with a nearly blind eye and a permanent ankle injury that caused him to limp. I requested to be sent back to Jamaica, and the company agreed. I left the city 2 months later, and I'm at peace here. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.